Welcome to the show. I'm Tamanna. Till about 6 months to a year ago, some of the hottest jobs was in the startup space. These were companies with exciting new business models, flush with cash and ready to pay top dollar for the right talent. In fact, stories of how some startups were luring talent with trips to Dubai and branded electronics and branded shoes had become folklore. But in the first few months of this calendar year, it seems like the gravy train has come to a halt. We've seen a wave of layoffs hitting India's startup landscape. By some estimates, at least 5,700 employees have been laid off in just the first 3 to 4 months of this year. Now, the reasons vary depending on the company. In some cases, it's resizing. In some cases, it's a move to more automation. Some divisions which were not as profitable as they were earlier believed to be may have been shut down, leading to these layoffs taking place. But the concern over here is the number of layoffs in the way they're taking place. So a large number of companies are laying off people, and that's part of the business cycle, right? You cut costs by laying off employees and then you hire again. But in this case, a few very serious questions that need to be answered. Is this because of the overall global financial climate where investors perhaps are now asking about sustainability and profitability, and founders need to show that their business plans will actually work? The second key question is the way some of these pink slips are being given out. Reports are abounding that people are being laid off on WhatsApp calls, not even been given the courtesy of an email. Some have found their severance pay in their bank accounts before they even know that they're being laid off. Bonuses and additional variable pay has suddenly disappeared from the whole scheme of things. So every industry goes through their cycle. Perhaps the cycle for startups will also change. But are these layoffs and the kind of layoffs telling us a bit more about the ecosystem here and the sustainability from the point of view of an employee as well? Will employees go in for high-paying, exciting jobs if there is no job security? To speak on some of these aspects, I'm joined today by Ganesh. He is promoter of BigBasket, Portia, Medical, Home Lane and more. Rituparna Chakraborty, Executive Vice President and co-founder of Teamlease, with me on the show. I'm also speaking with Aditya Narayan Mishra. He's Director and CEO of Ciel HR Services. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us on the show today on what we believe is a very important subject. Now, Mr. Ganesh, to start off with, we're nowhere suggesting that, everything is looking bleak as far as startup jobs are concerned. But could you put into perspective why we are seeing such massive layoffs? Is it also in some part a case of misjudgment by certain founders who, when seeing that they're flush with cash, made the wrong business decisions?
Yeah. Firstly, happy to be here, and obviously would have been happier if you're talking about valuations, soaring employment rate. This is a challenging question. So I think the numbers speak for themselves. I don't think we are in a gloom and doom scenario. The number of jobs, whether 5,000 or 6,000, is a minuscule single-digit fraction of what startup has hired in the last 1 year. So let's do it in perspective. 5,000 is not a small number, but as a percentage of new jobs created by the startups, new employment created startup, it is minuscule. It definitely not scary. I'm not getting into the mode of firing. I'll come to that in a minute. But in terms of perspective, this is very small, insignificant fraction of the jobs, new jobs created by the startup sector.
Could you put a number to that? Because you're saying minuscule, you're saying insignificant. Obviously, for these employees and their families, it's definitely not insignificant. But can you give us a sense on an average, what kind of a monthly hiring is there? And then it also matters about the seniority of the jobs that are being let go, right? The cost of the jobs that are being let go.
Yeah. So no, valid question. If you look at just from 2015, when there were 5,000 startups, in 2021, in just 6 years, there were 60,000 startups. Even if you take an average, you're talking about at least, even if you take 100, for example, you talk about 60 lakhs jobs being created. You're talking about 5,000 job losses out of 60 lakh jobs. It is really minuscule. But what's more important? What's more important is that nobody's really crying. There has been a huge challenge with for startups to hire people. Every person, almost every person, I don't have data here, almost every person will find another job. It is not that these people who are getting laid off are having a challenge. In fact, like you rightly said, it was the reverse. The salaries were going up, people were switching jobs, startups were struggling to hire people. So it actually, the challenge is on the other side.
K. Ganesh claims no one is really crying. I mean, I'm not sure. There has been extensive reportage in the media, a lot of them quoting people.
Minuscule
A lot of them quoting people who have been laid off. And I mean, I don't know of anyone who feels joy in their heart when they're laid off or handed a pink slip. Dignity also matters. But, you know, the point is, what really is going on? Rituparna, if you can come in on this, because we've spoken several times during the up cycle. Is this a regular down cycle? Is this got to do with finally the money running out and the whole funding scenario of startups and the way it works coming into question? No one was asking about business model sustainability, profitability in very concrete terms, say about 6 months, 8 months ago. That scenario has changed now. And do you think that is what is resulting in these layoffs?
Thanks so much for having me on the show. I think first and foremost, like I agree with you, Tamanna, that even if one person gets laid off without any notice, it is heartbreaking for that person, and hence I don't think we should make peace with that. However, we side by side have to acknowledge the fact that yes, startups have essentially ushered in an era of incredible innovation, employment generation, and something that I think India has been sorely missing out on in the last decade or so. So I think that there are pluses to it. But I think what's important to know is that, yes, the startups are good. We should welcome. There is a lot of attention that's being given to this sector. Government is actively promoting 100 unicorns and so on and so forth. But at no point should be advocating letting go of the fundamentals of running a business. I think what we are noticing is that the attention is more on valuation today and the number of series of funding, rather than on how the business in a sustainable manner growing towards showing a path of profitability.
Yeah.
I personally hold individuals and candidates. I mean, I'm not somebody who is probably equipped to hold a mirror in front of the startups, and that's honestly not something. This is an experimentation process. Some will succeed, some will fail. We know that. But I think it's also an important aspect is for the kids today, the youth of India today, that what essentially are you going to bet your career on? It's important that, yes, that you join some of these startups to learn at the early stages, but side by side, are you keeping in mind the basic fundamentals? What's the sustainable business model? Are you asking the right questions when you're joining an organization? The incredible, there is no correlation sometimes with the kind of packages some of these kids are being paid as against their regular market demand. Okay, great, you are being awarded that particular kind of an opportunity, but how long can the company sustain this kind of a...
But Rituparna, is that really the problem of the employee?
My point is there are misjudgments at both ends, to be honest.
I mean, these are young kids. These are young kids who were sold the story of, you know, you get in on the ground floor, you get ESOPs. Look at XYZ company where the founders are now gazillionaires at age of 25. I mean, it's an exciting story.
I'm not sure the infancy argument holds good given the kind of packages we are talking about and the kind of talent that we're talking about. This is not the conversation of delivery boys or agents. These are people who are highly educated, they're literate. So essentially what I'm trying to is that all that glitters is not gold. We should ask the right questions of sustainability as much as the startup should ask themselves the question about what is the profitability model ahead of them, because a lot of people's careers are at stake. Lost time, no matter what,
Yes.
doesn't come back, and that has impact. What I'm trying to bring everyone's attention is there is judgment required at both ends, and it's not that it's somebody is being coerced to take up these opportunities as well.
No, absolutely not. There is no coercion, and I'm sure while the going was good, people enjoyed all the perks, great workspaces, all of that. But my question is, has there been transparency at the get-go when the idea of that dream job was sold? Because people left traditional jobs, more secure jobs, because startups was the hottest thing. If you weren't working with or around a startup, around tech, you were behind the curve. Aditya, I want you to come in on this and this interesting debate which has sprung up here. Was it the employee or the employees who were not looking at the writing on the wall, or was it the startup side that was overestimating how some of their models would work out?
Thanks, Tamanna. Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I think the ecosystem of the startups in India has really made significant amount of progress. There is no doubt about it. And India as an investment destination has emerged and taken very long strides. But coming to specifically to your question, whether it is more the candidates or more the employers, the startups, I would say it is more the startups who have to really they are the leading force who are creating the heat in the market and the war for talent which is there, because the opportunity has got a small window available and they want to maximize the benefits or the outcomes that they could create within that window of time. So there is a war for talent, and there are organizations that we know of because we hire talent for a lot of startups across industry sectors. So we see that someone is holding one offer, then another second offer comes, and the third company is trying to match or exceed the second offer. So as recruiters, we think that some of these behaviors are possibly lot short-sighted, and we have seen that some organizations, I'm not trying to paint the entire canvas with the same stroke of the brush. There are some organizations who have taken an extremely short-sighted view of the future, and just out of whatever maybe the pressure of the investors or the money has come in and they need to show some results in terms of just hiring people, bringing people on board. They have gone a little overboard. And like Ritu said, that sometimes we have to really assess the candidates who are extremely well qualified. They need to possibly assess that, life is always, the coin has two sides. So something which is extremely rewarding is also extremely risky. So I need to be, when the rug is pulled off my feet, I will fall. So, when I go onto those kind of specialized drugs and try to enjoy the luxuries of that, sometimes it could be risky. So I think in some way, I feel that there is a little bit of sense which is settling down, which is good for the startup industry. But we do not really see, people being extremely worried, people as in the candidates, job seekers, are being extremely worried about it. I know of several candidates who we have also placed and they lost their jobs within just a few months. And very unfortunate way, it could be the immaturity of the leadership team in the startups who kind of dealt with that situation in that way, or in sometimes maybe overzealous.
I'm going to come to that dignity while firing people. I'm going to come to it, but just one important point, Mr. Mishra. Are you saying that people are landing on their feet? Because that's something which Ganesh was talking about as well, and that's great news if it's happening. Are people landing on their feet fairly quickly and finding another job?
They will find some jobs, but there are some who haven't yet. They're kind of in that process, but they will find some jobs. They're not really I won't really say that it's a huge crisis or there are mental health issues and people are really, some of these things may be slightly more exaggerated than what reality is, but it is definitely a trouble.
I'm coming to you, Mr. K. Ganesh, because now the question of how you are firing people. I mean, obviously, businesses need to re-look at their workforce time and again. It's a part of the business process. But the cavalier attitude, which has been reported in some quarters, and I'm not saying all, but in some ways, where, you fire people on a mass Zoom call, or you do a WhatsApp call and you say that, you're done. People getting their severance package before they even know what it's for. At least there should be some dignity when you let people go.
No, absolutely, Tamanna. There is no excuse for not doing it the right way, proper way. Proper information, outplacement services, notice, both contractual, additionally doing something more than minimum contractual requirement, like covering the health benefit for few more months post severance. All of that sensitively needs to be done, and that will help the company and the brand for a long time to come. And the examples that get quoted in the media are bizarre, extreme, and cannot be condoned in any way. It shows the immaturity of the founders or specific companies. But once again, I'll come back. This is few of those rare instances. Even if I were to make you list, you will be able to list 5 or 10 out of tens of thousands of companies that are doing massive hiring. Startups never ever promised lifelong employment. If you're looking at lifelong employment, join government, public sector, or perhaps large industrial house that doesn't get into this. Startups are looking at future. They are opening new models. They are pivoting models. The models will shut down. And all that I'm saying is that this is not like Mr. Mishra said, it's not a crisis that people are doing that. Therefore, put it in context and perspective, but to be sensitively done, to be done with dignity. If you don't do it, the startup will suffer. People will not join that particular startup again.
No, but what should they look out for when they join? Rituparna, you made a point that employees should know what they're getting into.
No, I don't think we should talk about. See,
No, I want to use this space. I want to use the space to give people information they can use. No one is saying that no one will join, that people will not join a startup. I want to understand from Rituparna, what are the questions you should ask your prospective employer when an offer comes up? It comes with perhaps a big jump on your current salary. You're promised a great designation. You are told that the business is exciting, has great potential, because you're betting on the future, right? What are the right questions to ask?
The most fundamental question is that what's your 5-year essentially roadmap? What is the kind of cash burn that you're looking at over the next few, let's say, months, quarters? And at what point are you looking at, turning around and turning profitable? Or if that's not in the horizon, if funds and fundings are being raised, which are the areas where this money is likely to go? Whether it's going in creating new products, whether it's going in marketing. I think one of the things that I have noticed, and again, I'm not an expert, but one of the things that I've noticed is that, and of course, Ganesh is an expert, he'll be able to weigh in more on this, but disproportionate amount of money and allocations of funds happen on marketing and brand building, while product, market acquisitions, the actual growth levers or top line levers still lag behind. So I think it's important to ask these questions, and any startup founders today, I'm sure, would be more than happy to share these plans, because these are people who are joining their dream in the early stages, and there is a co-ownership, collaborating kind of an approach that most startups are taking. So it's important to understand these questions. Also, what are the kind of financial backing? Which kind of angel investors are investing in you, their own outlook, their own track record in terms of the kind of organizations that they have invested and turned around. There is no harm asking these questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But there is one thing I wanted to add to what Aditya and Ganesh mentioned. I think, from the startups perspective, they should always remind themselves that you can lose money here and there, but baddua of doing things with indignity is not something that you can overcome so
Yeah,
easily.
yeah. You
No
know, the
matter what
credibility.
circumstance.
Yeah, the credibility
Yes,
factor, the credibility factor. You know, just a quick response from,
karma.
yeah,
That's it.
quick response from Mr. Mishra before we wrap up, and I'm running out of time, though this is a fascinating conversation, I must say. Do you think this will take away the sheen of startup jobs? People will think twice. Do you think that is likely to happen?
No, not at all. I think the ecosystem is pretty strong. We see, in fact, a lot of educational institutes kind of encouraging people. You would have seen the news of IITs and a few other such institutes who are encouraging the concept of starting up. People are willing to take risks, and because the socioeconomic standards of the middle class families has been on the constant rise, the children of those families who are in their 20s today are not experiencing the kind of challenges that people in their 20s experienced 3 decades ago or 2 decades ago. So it's a very different mindset. People are willing to take a 1 year break from their studies, try their hands at a startup, and pursue entrepreneurship as a career. We see so many people interested in entrepreneurship. We go to campuses and encourage people to know more about entrepreneurship, the pluses, minuses, how to set up a company, and all of that. They don't study that in the any course that they do, but we encourage people. We see some of those trends happening. Possibly some degree of caution, some degree of check is required, like Ritu was saying.
Right.
Just two questions that we recommend people to ask is, who are the founders, what is their background, what has been their track record, and who are the people who are backing them up, like who are these investors, what is their
Yeah,
track record.
yeah.
So
No,
these two
no harm
questions
in
help.
going with your own homework and asking your own set of questions even in an interview. Why not? Let's have transparency at all ends, and that's, I guess, the biggest takeaway. We'll have to wrap this here, but I want to thank all of you for joining us on the show. And just to end by saying, we're nowhere suggesting that the startup story is not going to grow stronger and stronger in India. It will be. It's a hub of innovation. It's changed the way people do transact and live their lives. But nothing can take away the kind of dignity you need to show people who work with you during a downturn. That everyone will remember. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.